hopefully not for too long, about unseen poetry. We know the poetry section is worth 70 marks. It's one of the things that hasn't changed this year, but it's worth 70 marks. And we know the unseen poem is worth 20 marks. And my strongly held opinion is that every time we look at a poem for the first time, we're doing unseen poetry. But I just want to spend some time just talking it through last year's unseen poem, and what kind of things to look for, to give you that sense of maybe confidence that you're going to be able to find enough in the poem to write answers. I suppose this section has the real fear factor attached to it. People are worried they're not going to see things that will be there, but you don't have to see very complicated things. You can see quite obvious things. Let me just show you, for example, when you start off, just remember there will be two questions, question one, question two, and you've got to pick one to answer. One of the questions will always be broken into two parts, worth 10 marks each, and one of the questions will always be worth 20 marks. One thing I can guarantee you is that you will be required to comment on the poet's use of language. Okay? So the second question was on how the poet's use of language conveys various aspects of his experience with the crow. So the key word there was various. That had to be, what's a variety? If you buy a variety pack and there's one thing in it, you're not happy, buyer beware, caveat emptor. If you buy a variety pack with, two items in it, is that enough? No. So what does variety mean? Well, for 20 marks, variety means 4. Because for unseen poetry, just like for your for your reading comprehension on paper 1, just follow the old rule. For every 5 marks available, write a paragraph with a distinct point in it, following the RIC rules. Don't forget what the RIC rules are. Make sure that each paragraph is built around, it doesn't have to start with it, but is built around a relevant topic sentence that identifies the paragraph and makes it easy to understand the point that's being made. That each paragraph is informed, and that means in this particular case supported by direct quotation from the poem that you're discussing, that you write as clearly as you can. So many of you write answers that might be accurate in terms of content but lack accuracy in terms of expression. In other words, your grammar, your syntax, your sentence structure, that means the same thing, your is muddled and unclear, and nobody likes writing that down. I often, when I'm correcting work, I want to write down muddled and unclear, and sometimes you do, but then you regret it afterwards because nobody wants to write in a way that's muddled and unclear. Nobody sets out to do it, and it can be hurtful to read that that's the assessment of your work. But also, there's an element of you have to be honest with people, and you need to get a grip on writing in a clear way. So relevant, informed, clear. And of course, the second C, the one that everybody struggles with, not everybody, but most people struggle with, is contextualization, which means, the intellectual, analytical ability to tease out the point and explain it in a logical way. Okay? So there are 2 questions in 2020. This is the first one, language, various aspects of the experience with the crow. Second one, first one, based on your reading of the poem, discuss the impact and suitability of the title. The title of the poem was Badab. And then the second part was, how does the poet bring the above poem by appealing to the senses? And that's a lovely question. I really like that question, actually. If you study aesthetic language, and I might do a little video reminder of the key elements of aesthetic language, but if you study aesthetic language, you'll know that one of the key things with aesthetic language is that you are able to comment on how the poet stimulates more than one sense. Like we have 5. So visual, olfactory, smell, tactile, touch. There's another word for tactile or for the sense of touch. I can't remember it now. Anyway, gustatory, taste, aural, hearing, and sorry, I'm missing one there. Olfactory, gustatory, visual, aural, and tactile. No, got them all. Okay, so they're the 5. So you look out for images designed to stimulate not just the visual sense, but sense of smell, touch, so So you look at those two questions, and for me, there's one that's much easier to do, and it's the second one. Because I don't like the first one. The title of the poem was Bad Up, and apologies to those of you who might be offended by my mispronunciation of the word. I don't care. Now, they do explain that the word Bad Up refers to the Celtic war goddess known for taking the form of a crow. Now, I just found that, an abstract, odd, if I can be honest, and I don't want to offend anybody, a little bit self-indulgent, that question. But on the other hand, it's a good thing. One of the things I like about the Leaving Cert English paper is that there often are tricky questions, and one of the things you're being tested on is your ability to make smart decisions and not pick the tricky question. Pick the flippin' easy question. So this is the easy question here. How does the poet use language to convey various aspects of his experience with the crow? So what I did was I went through the poem and I just highlighted a couple of things, okay? So look at the first 4 lines of the poem and this yellow bit here. I was walking where the woods begin, with an almost sheer drop to the river. So that I was eye level with the tops of nearby trees and higher than the branch when I came upon the crow sitting there. The day is described as having malt pale October sunlight. Now you take those first 4 lines and that bit together, and you go down here and you look at, okay, discuss how the poet's use of language conveys various aspects of his experience with the crow. Well, one of the things that he does successfully in that opening sequence, in the bits I've highlighted, one of the aspects was the setting. Okay? So where are we? We're in the woods. When are we? It's October. What time of the day is it? Okay? It's sunlight. Or what time is it? It's the daytime. And then you have the attention to incidental details. That makes the setting vivid. Sorry. Just look. Look what he says. He says there was a sheer drop to the river. Talk about language. What you've got very simply is a very, very, very descriptive adjective-noun combination. Okay? So you're in the woods, there's a river, but you're on top of some sort of ledge or ridge, and there's a really, really, really sharp, sheer drop down to the river. That helps place us in our imagination in the same place that he really was when he saw the crow. So not only do we know where we are, we're in the woods, not only do we know when we are, it's October, but we also have this kind of very specific physical location. That's a paragraph. Then you have this little detail, I was eye level with the tops of nearby trees. Again, that's a really good example. Of attention to detail. That's all you have to say. That little detail creates a photographic image. It communicates the sense of landscape. It illustrates the fact that the writer was on a hill or on a piece of elevated land, and it stimulates the visual sense, because we can see the trees aren't above us, they're not below us, we're eye level with them. That little bit of detail brings the scene to life. There's a paragraph. And then when you add in the fact that he uses the compound word malt pale to describe the October sunlight, well, that's very, very, very clever. Again, all it is an inventive and original adjective or noun, adjective combination. We're getting a real sense of this place. So that's an important aspect of his experience with the crow. We are brought in our imagination to the place where it's in a wood. But it's not just in a wood, it's on a height in the wood. How high is it? Well, there's a sheer drop to the river. So now maybe our aural sense is stimulated, because if we know there's a river, well, maybe there's a sound of running water. And not only is there a sheer drop to the river, but he was eye level with the tops of the trees, which again allows us to visualize without any effort, because of the detail, the view or the aspect that he was seeing while he was there when he saw the crow. And then you have the sense of the light being kind of malt pale, so not a very bright light. And you get a sense of maybe it's not too warm because it's October, and it's October, and October is autumnal, so you get a sense that maybe the wood is autumnal, maybe the colours are kind of orange and faded greens and yellows. So there's a paragraph. There's loads of things you can say there about his use of language and that aspect of the setting. What else could you say? Well, have a look. There was a little hint in the first question. Have a look at these two quotes here. I'll take this one. Pop it down here. And I'll take this one. Pop it down there. Now, come on, use the brain. No dummies watching this video. Everybody's got their brain switched on. When you hear the word tangy, doesn't that stimulate a sense? Okay? You hear the word tangy, you get taste. But then it's tangy smells. So what's the writer doing? The writer is stimulating the olfactory sense. So that's tied to the point you made in the previous paragraph about the setting. But now you're saying that not only did the writer, vividly describe the setting and the sense of place in a visual sense, but the writer also stimulated or wrote or created sensual imagery. Look at the line here. Look, see here. Appealing to the senses, sensual imagery by appealing to the olfactory sense with the note that the woodland smells were tangy. And then you have the aural sense similarly stimulated by the reference to the single rough vowel, which is the sound that the bird makes when it sees him. So we can hear the bird, we can hear the sound it makes. It's a rough vowel. It's very, very, very pointed and accurate use, again, of adjectives and nouns. Those noun-adjective combinations, bringing the scene to life, but now also stimulating our imagination, allowing us to know what the place smelled like and allowing us to know what the crow sounded like when it opened its beak. That's a paragraph. Might not be as detailed as this paragraph, but that's an aspect of the poet's experience with the crow. Not only where did it take place, but also what was the senses like on that day? What did things smell like? What did the things sound like? And the writer's use of language, the adjective-noun combination, tangy, woodland smells, and single, rough vowel, bring that reality to life. Allow us to experience something that we have not experienced through the power of language. That's what aesthetic language is. Aesthetic language is the paint that a writer uses to create images, where the artist has his paint, his palette, or her palette, and she takes her brush and she takes her paint and she puts strokes up on the canvas to create the image, to create something that is an illusion of truth, but allows us to see something that otherwise we wouldn't be able to see. That's what writers do, but writers use words. And instead of using perspective, they use, similes. And instead of using fumato, you learned that when you did your junior cycle, they use, metaphors. But one of the most basic things that writers do is they pay attention to the noun-adjective combinations. And then the other thing they do is they pay attention to verb choice. Have a look at this. So we've got the setting, we've got the appealing to the senses. That's two aspects. Let's look at this part here. Why have I got this, these sections highlighted? She came alert and looked at me. Her beak sprang open, the gaping mouth of her beak. Let's say these two, okay? Gaping, what a great word. What an inventive verb. Is there such a word? I don't think so. Has the writer created that word to try and capture, what the bird looked like to him? I think so. Is it okay to make up words when you're a writer? Shakespeare did it. And a rule in life is if it was good enough for the greatest writer ever to, I was going to say put pen to paper. In Shakespeare's case, it was quill to parchment. But if there was ever, somebody who said, right, let's just play with words, it was Shakespeare. Gaping, by the way, is a verb. So we could say that's an inventive choice of verb. And it's an example of what we call neologism. And a neologism is when, if a writer, Seamus Heaney did this all the time when he did his compound words. You're familiar with Heaney, I'm sure. But sometimes you got the sense that Heaney wasn't happy that one word would suffice, or it didn't really capture what he wanted to say. So he had this habit of kind of marrying two words together using a dash, just like the writer does here in the phrase malt pale. And that's when you make up a new word, either by completely inventing one like gaping, or by creating a compound word, that's called a neologism. It's using words in a way which is inventive and essentially creating a new word to fit your meaning. So when we have the image of the beak springing open, when we have the image of the gaping mouth, when we have the image of her coming alert and looking at him, when we have the image of her swaying on the branch, and we have the image of her creaturely and unwary as the wind bore her away and brought her back. I mean, magnificent that as well. Wow. Adjective noun combinations and the sense of movement, away and back. We get another aspect of his encounter with the bird. We get the sense of the physical appearance of the bird. Up here, we've got the verb choice again, the very, 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 I was going to say active verb, but obviously all verbs are active, but like that sprang open, you get the immediacy, the speed, and I used to call it, back then I used to call it PVS. I stopped talking about PVS because I found people were writing down PVS, despite the fact I told them, that's just my shorthand for precise verb selection. Just remember PVS. But write down the precision of the verb choice, and of course students ignore you. But PVS means precise verb selection. And you're asked, how did the writer use language to, capture aspects of his experience with the bird? Well, very, very precise verb selection. You have that immediacy of sprang, which communicates the speed at which the mouth opened. You've got then another very precise verb, which is in fact a neologism, because he's invented the verb to capture the extent to which the bird's mouth opens, gawping, somehow suggesting that it's open beyond the point of elasticity, or beyond the point at which it can imaginably open. And then you have this description of the bird as being creaturely and unwary. That means unafraid. And you're learning about not only what the bird looks like, but also something about the sense of confidence in that bird as it sat on the branch and the branch blows and it's being brought back and forward as the wind bore her away and brought her back. And I love, if you wanted to mention language, the alliteration of bore and brought and back, which gives a real rhythm to that line. And that rhythm in that line communicates the sense of movement. I'm after doing the wrong thing there, sorry folks. Communicates the sense of movement that the writer is trying to convey in the image. Okay, so we have the physical setting, the wood, the river, the sheer drop, the light, the October, the season. We have the senses appeal to, and now we have a real sense of characterization, the physical characterization or description of the bird, and also a sense of the bird's, its nature, its unwary. Okay, so very lovely. There's 3. Would you struggle for 4? Possibly, until you look at the last part. Now, sorry, that looks terrible with that highlighter. I'll try and change that. They need to improve the selection of highlight options for a fella like me. That's worse. We got with this one. Oh, hold on. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? Now, wheeling above the trees, carrying on their business, neighbourly and otherworldly. I love the imagery there. And again, you're capturing something about the bird. So it's the choice of the verb wheeling. So you're capturing its flight, but kind of circular flight. That's not just a crow, but all of the crows that go up into the sky. And then this idea of them being neighbourly and otherworldly. And that's the bit I would throw in as well about his experience with the bird. That he actually really found the experience striking and memorable. That's a separate paragraph. Because he was forced to think about how familiar crows are. Crows are neighbourly. We see them all the bloody time. I'm looking at the window here and I see a crow outside. But they are also otherworldly. In other words, we don't know really that much about them. We don't know how they think, how they feel. There's a mystery to them. Where do they go when we're not looking at them? They are part of the natural world, and we live with the natural world. We are part of the natural world, but they are other from us. So his experience with the crow wasn't just an experience, a sensual experience. It wasn't just an event that took place, that occurred in a place. It wasn't even just, the physical and the striking quality of the bird's physical existence, but it was also impactful on the writer, made the writer aware of something beyond the everyday, something beyond the obvious. It stopped. It made the writer think about nature and about our familiarity with nature and also our distance from it. So there's 4 things you could write about in your answer. You got a few weeks. What you need to do is go and look at unseen poems. There will always be a language question, and you need to go and dig in. Sometimes it'll be similes, they're very easy. Sometimes it'll be a really dramatic opening line. That's very easy to write about, grabs the reader's attention. Remember that. Sometimes there'll be an obvious metaphor. Sometimes there'll be meter. There is some meter in this poem, but quite a lot of the lines in this poem are written in iambic pentameter, but not enough for me to mention it, and it certainly wasn't relevant to the experience with the bird, so I didn't bring it in. But you can look out for any of those things: juxtaposition, oxymorons, anything like that at all. Analogies, biblical allusions, literary allusions. All that stuff adds to language, and you'll certainly find enough to write about it. There's never been an unseen poem in the Leaving Cert that was really, really, really hard. If you know what you're looking for, it's straightforward. If you don't, you're not going to score well. So there you go. Listen, if you want me to maybe write some of the paragraphs and show you how they could be written based on that work, just let me know and I'll do it for you in a different video. Okay, that's that.